Today on a Friday, the 23rd of February, 2024. It's almost here. It's almost here. It's almost here. And we've been talking about it for a long time. College basketball and the road to March. So we're going to go over some AP polls. We're going to talk about a little bit of college basketball today because it's on the horizon. It's coming up. March is only a few days away, let alone it's only about a week away. Because we got a leap year. We got the 29th of February to deal with coming up here in a week's time. But there's some things to unpack. There's some things to discuss regarding these teams that are going to be contenders. And obviously teams that are not in the AP polls, we know they're going to be contenders. We know they're going to have an impact. We know they're going to play a significant role come the big dance. And we're going to call it that, coin that term, talk about it day in and day out. Every chance we get, we're going to talk about it. Leading up to the month of March, mid-March, even leading into the month of April, which it all flies by. It all comes and goes. We know that life has its ebbs and flows. Its seasons come and they go just as quick as they arrive. We know that. So real quick, let's just get the AP polls out of the way because, listen, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people talking about the AP polls. A lot of these teams you've heard of before. A lot of these teams you've seen before. And basically, we're going to go over some of their costly losses. And the number one team that is currently ranked number one, not going to be for long, is UConn. UConn is currently number one. And as we know, they are the real deal. They're the real deal. They're the champs. And their only losses are to Kansas and Creighton. So not bad company. Not bad company to have losses against those two teams. The problem is their loss to Creighton, it came untimely. It came very recently. And that is really going to open the driver's seat wide open for Houston. Houston is going to waltz right in there with only losses to TCU and Iowa State, which Iowa State is ranked number 6 in the AP polls. Purdue 23-3. They're coming off a big loss against the Ohio State Buckeyes, which I had the pleasure to watch that game. I don't think I've ever rooted for Ohio State in any sport at any point in my life. The only time that I did was this past weekend when I seen them really stick it to Edey, Matt Painter, and the entire Purdue Boilermakers fan base. And it was a beautiful sight. I was very happy to witness what I saw, and I was pulling for that Ohio State team, and I wanted them to win. And I can say that with a straight face, and my fingers are not crossed. I promise you, I'm being 100% genuine when I say that. Because what does that do? It shakes the pot. It shakes the entire situation. Not only in the AP polls, which it does shake the situation in the AP polls, but it shakes the situation and the conversation in the Big Ten. We're wrapping up Big Ten play, which essentially you're talking about conference play across the board is taking place and it is basically wrapping up the season across the college basketball landscape, leading into the big dance, leading into Selection Sunday, which we all love. We all can't wait for. Who's your team going to be picked to play, if at all? If you're the Michigan Wolverines, it's looking like NIT at best again. And questions remain. Is Juwan Howard on his way out? Is he trying to avoid the door hitting him on the way out? That has yet to be determined, but, and a lot of these guys, he's part of the Fab Five. He has that grandfather rule where it's like, okay, yeah, you've been here, you played here, you did a hell of a job, and you've done your thing, you've done your part, and now you're basically giving back to the university. Obviously, it's not a charity deal; they're paying him to do it, but it's like, how much can they take? And good thing about the football program is it wound up panning in the right direction, and it panned in their favor with Michigan winning a championship with Jim Harbaugh, and they've always been knocking. And don't get me wrong, Jawan's had his teams too. This just hasn't been his stretch. His last 2 years haven't been a good stretch for Michigan basketball, and Michigan fans will agree with that. And it's just an unfortunate series of events, and they might need a breath of fresh air. They might need a new coach right there in the Chrysler Center. It might just not be the era for Juwan Howard It might just not be clicking on all cylinders for Juwan Howard. And he might just have to sit there and accept it. That's just how it is. And he's got to deal with it and, eat those punches and move on to his next endeavor, which is probably going to be an analyst somewhere. So you got number 1 UConn, number 2 Houston. Let's get back on track here. Let's get back to baseline here. Number 1 UConn, number 2 Houston, number 3 Purdue, number 4 Arizona and the Wildcats at 20-5. They have two big losses to Washington State. Both untimely losses, kind of keeping them in the conversation. Some of these teams, they take an untimely loss, like Purdue. They lose to unranked Ohio State. They only drop 1 spot. Like, you tell me that shouldn't be just bringing them completely out of the conversation as far as, potential 1 seed. That blows my mind. I just don't get how that can happen. Zach Edey, is he the X factor? Was he made in a laboratory? Possibly. I'm leaning towards that camp that he was. Okay, that it's a serious possibility, and a lot of people aren't talking about it. But I'm going to bring it up on this show. But that proves that he can be beat. So maybe he is a human if he can be beat. So be it. So Arizona's sitting at the number 4 spot. They've also lost to Stanford, Florida Atlantic, and Purdue and Oregon State, wrapping up their 5 losses for the Wildcats. Number 5, Tennessee, sitting at 19-6. Serious contending team, but do they have what it takes to make the stretch? A serious contender for a 2 seed, I would say. Possibly a 3 seed. I think a 3 seed is more where they belong. And then you got the Iowa State Cyclones, which, they've always had a serious basketball program. They've been known as of late, since the Monte Morris era, to have a serious basketball program, is very well built. And in the same conversation, same breath, sitting at number 7 is Marquette. And they took it and they drove it home to my Spartans last year. Well deserving. Probably didn't deserve to make it as far as we did last year. But they did. They always find a way. Izzo finds a way. And let's be honest, Michigan State has been known to play solid basketball in the postseason, regardless of the team they have, regardless of the talent. So if they can amount to that, if they can figure it out, if they can, try to scrape some talent together, we're going to talk about them here in a second. We got a bone to pick with the Spartans. But they might be able to make another run yet again. But Marquette is going to be a serious contending team. We've known that. We've seen that. We know they have the players. We know they have the team chemistry, and it just speaks for itself. Duke Blue Devils sit at number 8. Kansas and Bill Self's team, 20-6, sit at number 9. And wrapping it up at the 10 spot is North Carolina, which, the big man Armando Bacot is still running rampant down there. So I remember, and I'm going to talk about a quick bet that I took last year. It regarded North Carolina, and they screwed me over so bad that I could never even watch another UNC game following that. I'm not going to get into details, but basically I put some money on this team. Basically, they were a sure thing. And it just solidifies the statement that there are no such thing as a sure thing in sports, in basketball, in football. Doesn't matter what it is. When you're dealing with college basketball, you're talking with the Final Four, going to Phoenix this year. Nothing is a sure thing. Anything can happen. The refs can really screw you at any chance they get. And hopefully I'm an official myself. I'm actually about to, hop in the car and go to Chesaning and officiate a varsity girls basketball game over there. As an official, you never want to be a person or a factor that plays a role in the game. You are basically there to officiate the game. You don't want to have any influence, if possible. Obviously, you have to intervene, and you can't let things get out of hand. So if you somehow, some way become a factor of influence, then so be it. But be patient on that whistle. Let the play fully develop, even if it's a late whistle. And this is what I tell people all the time. And it's hard to explain this and articulate myself in such a way when I'm on the court and I hear parents in the background, they're heckling me and yelling. You got to have thick skin as an official. But what I tell them is, and even as a fan and as a player, I knew this and I shared this same mentality where, oh, you get a late whistle. Oh my God, ref, that was a late whistle. That was a late whistle. You think, oh, that's a bad call. That's a bad call. Why is he blowing the whistle so late? He must have been so indecisive about the call when it happened in real time that he has to make the call so late because he thought about it, contradicted himself in his mind, and said, you know what? I think I got to blow the whistle and call whatever it is, violation, foul, whatever it is. But in reality, from an official standpoint, they are letting the play fully develop. They're letting everything happen, letting everything settle, the dust settle, everything unfold. And basically, an exclamation point, period, has to be put at the end of that sentence, which is that play, before a good call can be made, before a fully informed call can be made. From an official standpoint, and this will shed some light on it for a lot of fans and players, hopefully, you should be able to appreciate a late whistle much more than an early whistle because you don't want a premature whistle in that case where maybe the play didn't fully develop. Maybe everything didn't happen that constituted for whatever call was made. You want to have everything occur in real time, let the dust settle, and let a call be made consciously. And then everyone can sing kumbaya. Unfortunately, that's not how it works usually. And it never will. It never will. There'll be a constant battle, constant struggle, not only between the fans and the refs, but between the refs and each sideline. And in this case, I'm talking about basketball in the same light, in the same vein of basketball, which we're talking about the Final Four, March Madness, the big dance, etc. So looking at these top 10 teams, yeah, there's going to be contenders. But in all reality, for all intents and purposes, I'm not going to put a lot of focus into the top 10. I'm looking more at the fringe teams. I'm looking at the teams from 10 to 25 and then even beyond because you're going to have your teams come in, 8, 9, 10 seeds, 11, 12, 13 seeds, where they're going to be serious contenders and they're going to make splashes just because they do every single year. So if you focus on those and kind of have a trickle down effect as far as analyzing these teams that are going to be at a higher seed, a higher numeric seed, which is essentially a worse seed because you get the less favorable matchups. That's going to set you aside. That's going to set you aside, especially when you're making your bracket, because I've never done it that way before. Everyone looks at the 1 through 4 seeds or the 1 through 4 ranked AP poll teams, which essentially, once the dust settles with conference tournaments, they wind up being the 1 seeds in their respected regions more times than not. Okay, unless you get a couple teams like a 4 and a 5 that have the same record, maybe one team beat the other, and you run into that issue sometimes, not frequently, but sometimes. So looking at that from an analytical standpoint, doing and you can call it a bottom to top model of looking at the teams that are not as favorable, that are not as high ranked, that are going to be serious contenders. We've seen it happen. We've seen the Fairleigh Dickinsons. We've seen, the Miamis. There's teams that you can you can talk about. St. Peter's. You can talk about them all day. You know their names, and they're on the map because they made a splash against big teams in the big dance. So focus on those teams. Focus on the teams that have made a difference in the past, and focus on those fringe teams that are probably going to get an invite to the tournament, but maybe they haven't made a big splash. Maybe they don't play in a super competitive conference, but don't get lost in the smoke and mirrors. Moving on, we got to talk about our Michigan State Spartans. This guy, Tyson Walker. It is back to the one-man band, and you're playing an Iowa Hawkeyes team at home at the Breslin Center with 4 conference games to go. You're fighting for position. You're coming off of the news that the Purdue Boilermakers have lost a key game to set them back, and obviously they're still going to be sitting there at the 1 spot in the Big Ten, and this only helps their situation with the loss to Iowa. But we are not happy. We are not in good spirits. I saw memes all over the place. I was actually talking to my old neighbor, my buddy, good buddy of mine at the yacht club, Chuck Parker. And he was a common face here on the podcast. We're going to be seeing him on here very soon again. He's been in talks with me. He wants to talk about Spartan basketball. And I told him, we got to have you on. We got to have you on because He'll post these memes where it talks about the current state of college basketball and the current state of Michigan State. The current state of Michigan State basketball. And sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's great. There was a good stretch of games there, a couple good wins, beating Michigan, beating Penn State. You can go back to the Illinois win also. And just talking about all that, and it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good because our team is coming around better late than never. We expected him to come around, maybe not this soon, maybe didn't want it to be this late, but they're going to do it eventually, and they did it. This game right here against Iowa, the Iowa Hawkeyes, losing 78-71 at home on your home turf. Okay, with Tyson Walker, Malik Hall, and AJ Hogard. AJ had 15, Malik and Tyson Walker had 16. And people have the balls to rag on Malik Hall. I'm telling them he's hustling the entire league. He's hustling even his own teammates because of how good he's playing. And I hate that I have to say that, but it really feels like he is. I'll tell you who's letting us down. It's this guy right here, Mady Sissoko, number 22. Great guy. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. I'll say it all the time, every single time I have the opportunity to. This guy is ruining Michigan State basketball. Maybe not single-handedly, but he's definitely playing a role in it. Okay, I get it. He's not as big as the other guys, but he's a big man. You got to be the big man. You got to assume the role of a big man. If you're undersized, you're undersized. Okay? But to have 0 points and 1 rebound when you're getting however many minutes you are, it's unacceptable. Carson Cooper's getting a lot of minutes too. At least he has 7 rebounds and 3 points. He's got to do way better. Xavier Booker, 2 rebounds, 2 points. Not good enough, but he's not getting the minutes to really get the blame like Mady Sissoko is. Carson Cooper's getting a ton of minutes too. And Jackson Kohler's getting more minutes than I can even fathom into stomach. I can't stomach how many minutes this guy's getting. Coming off an injury, playing very rusty. He needs some WD-40. Okay, he's playing so rusty. He needs some WD-40. He needs something. He needs something. He needs a reality check. But it boils down to this. It boils down to recruiting, and it boils down to coaching. Who is our designated big man? Obviously, Izzo has decided that it's Mady Sissoko. So get with that big man. Make sure he has the tools in his arsenal to be able to assume that role of the big man. Not only that, but also to be able to play the role of the 5. Because if you can't play the role of the 5, you got to find someone that can. We've seen very prominent big men come through East Lansing in the past. We've seen it. We've seen the Jaren Jacksons. We've seen the Xavier Tillmans. We've seen the Adrian Paynes. We've seen the Costellos. The list goes on and on. Prominent big men have to pass the torch, and they know their roles. They know they have to play well. They know they have to play strong in the paint. They know they have to get buckets easily. And Michigan State has struggled so hard, so bad, and this is going the last couple years at the 5 spot. It's been abysmal. Worse than Tyson Walker having to be a one-man band on a nightly basis. The 5 position is in shambles, and it has to be fixed. It has to be fixed, or they're a one and done. They're a first round, first out team. That's if they even make it. They're on the bubble still. They're counting on some wins. I mean, they got to win out. Because you got to think about it. Those higher numeric seeds are reserved for certain teams. Michigan State cannot come in as a 16 seed or 14 seed. Or 12 seed. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So they got to figure it out. That's all I can really say on the matter. And that's all I will say on the matter. Because it's really not worth any more of my time than that. Abysmal loss, sitting at 17-10. Playing against the Iowa Hawkeyes team. Yes, they're poised. Yes, they're coming into the Breslin. Yes, they want to win. They have Michigan State's number. Regardless of the record on Michigan State's team, on their team record, not just conference record, their overall record. Every team that comes into that building is going to have their number. They're going to want to win. So they're going to have to figure it out. They have to make it happen. And we're going to have to see what they do to build off of that loss because they have a lot to do, a lot of film to watch, a lot of grids to run, a lot of free throws to shoot. I just got to see better, and it's got to be more consistent because it builds up, it builds up, it builds up. Okay, we're in good spirits. We're prepared for the pain, no matter what. We're prepared for the pain. We're prepared for the hurt, the heartache. We're ready for it. But when they build up and build up and build up momentum, and then they lose it all, you're back to square one. The GSN Challenge 5, the fifth iteration of the GSN Challenge, the two-man. We're growing the two-man. Every single year we do this event. We're happy to put it on. Coming at you June 8th, 2024 at Briar Ridge Golf Course. The post has just been made. Make sure to get in the form, get your teams together, and we'll see you there on June 8th. Come out there and compete for the jackets and share in some good company, all for a great cause for the Thomas Smith Memorial Foundation. They do a lot of great work over there, John and Mary. So be sure to be a part of it. Take part in this groundbreaking history-making event. With that, I'll leave you guys with it. Thank you so much for tuning into the Gin College podcast. Make sure to check us out on social media, ginsportsnetwork.com, online, and at Gin Sports Network and at Gin College on IG. Be sure to follow us on Twitter as well at Gin Pros, and follow me on all socials at Gin Commish. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning into this edition of the Gin College podcast. I'm your host, John J. II. Have a great night.